Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We had some technical difficulties with the previous video, which is why it's short. We're going to finish this up real fast. So we just got done talking about what a TSE is. TSEs are transmissible spongiform encephalopathies. Brain disease that can be caught where the brain is like a sponge. The one TSE that you've heard of is bovine spongiformencephalopathy, though it's never called that, or you've not heard it called that. You've heard it called mad cow disease. Bovine means cow. So mad cow disease is the TSE that most people have heard about. It was about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, where there was an outbreak of mad cow disease in Europe. And this outbreak, it was really bad in that lots of animals had to be destroyed. The problem with these prion things is that they couldn't be destroyed by cooking them, so you couldn't eat tainted meat from these animals that were infected with prions. How did they get it? The only way to get the prion, the only way to get one of these TSEs is to eat infected material. Infected material, for the most part, means you had to eat brain material, because we said encephalopathy, and ceph means in the head, the brain. You had to eat infected brain material. So how does a cow eat infected brain material? Cows don't eat brains. Zombies. They don't eat brains, so how is it that a cow did it? And they did it by a practice which was banned in the 90s in America, but was practiced later on after that, called forced cannibalism. Forced cannibalism is when, after an animal has been butchered, there's lots of bits and pieces that they can't do a whole bunch with, and what they do is all of the bones and whatnot are basically put into a big old pot, and then it's just boiled off, and all of the meat comes out, and they take all of that meat, the bones, the bits and pieces and whatever, that includes the brain and spinal cord. They take that stuff and they grind it up, because it's protein. They grind it up, they mix it with cornmeal, and they turn it into cow feed. And then they feed it to cows. Well, so cows are eating cows. Are cows supposed to eat cows? No. Forced cannibalism. That's how bovine spongiformencephalopathy spread so much in Europe. Was they did a lot more forced cannibalism than we did. That was like the one thing America did right, was we didn't allow forced cannibalism. Let's look at how the protein works, and I'll explain it to you. So the way this works is that you've got a protein in your brain that has a job that it does, and this is the proper shape of that protein. Remember how proteins have a proper shape? They have to begin to work, and if you change the protein, you can change the function of it. Most of the time, it breaks it. Well, if you change the shape of this particular protein, it will sometimes take on this shape. This is the wrong shape. This protein has a job that it does, and what its job is not that important to us. Well, you knowing isn't that important. It is important. It's so important that if it doesn't get done, then the brain cell dies. But this protein has a job that it does. This broken protein, this rogue conformer, meaning it's got the wrong shape, what it does is it turns the right protein wrong. It's a tool that changes a good tool into a bad tool. That's what this does. So in a way, it's kind of like a zombie, because what is a zombie? A zombie used to be a proper person that then got attacked by a rogue person, and attacking this rogue person then turned them into a bad one. This is the zombie. This is the good person. What happens when the zombie attacks the good person? It turns the good person into a zombie. This is how spongiform encephalopathies work. This is what a prion is. This is the prion. This is the malformed protein. And what it does is it changes the good form into the bad form. There are a few of these that are known. Bovine spongiform encephalopathy is the one that's most well known. And yes, a human can catch mad cow from eating infected material, and for the most part, we talked about this. Where is it? It's in the brain and spinal cord, so what did you have to eat? You had to eat brain and spinal cord. There are cases of people that got it, but there's not that many of them, like a couple dozen. And yeah, either died or will eventually die because it doesn't happen quickly. It takes a long time. There's no medicine. There's no treatment for it. There is a human version of it, 2 human versions of it, called Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, and yes, that's how you say it, variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. So Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease is an inherited version of this. Some people inherit the version, which means their body just makes this thing on its own by accident. And it can be passed down from generations. Variant means this isn't the kind that you inherited. This is the kind that you caught. How did you catch it? You probably caught it by eating, some strange brain dish, not in America. There are only, I think, 4 cows in America that were ever found to have bovine spongiformencephalopathy. 2 of them were brought over from England, and 2 came down from Canada, which has a very close relationship with England. So maybe it was 6 cows. Regardless, it was less than 10. And none of those animals ever got into the food supply. So you don't need to worry about eating hamburgers and steaks. It's fine. There is a version of this called Kuru, and Kuru is in Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea is, some of the tribes in New Guinea are cannibal tribes. And let's pause for just a second and talk about cannibal tribes. Cannibal tribes aren't what you think they were most of the time. When you think about cannibal tribes, you think, oh, they go over to the next village and they kill everybody and they just have a big barbecue. And that's generally not what cannibal tribes were. They didn't murder people to eat them. Most of the time, cannibal tribes were, if a family member died, you had to eat bits of that family member to keep their magic or spirit or essence or whatever you want to call it in the family. And that, so if your dad dies and you have to eat a piece of your dad's brain so that his, magic stays within your family. And it's insulting to let your dad die and to not eat a part of his brain because you're just letting his magic be wasted, right? So it's their cultural, how they thought of it. Well, again, you have to eat a part of their brain and other bits and pieces of their bodies, but still, it would wipe out entire families. Whole families would die because of Kuru. Again, spongiformencephalopathy. Chronic wasting disease is a version that deer get. We're not exactly sure how deer get them, but they probably have an inherited version of it, very, very much like Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. I don't think there's any evidence of any deer in Georgia. I don't think there's any evidence of deer in Georgia having been found to have chronic wasting disease, though there are deer in America that absolutely, there's actually a website you can go to that tracks it, that tracks what counties deer have been found that have chronic wasting disease. And if you eat contaminated meat, contaminated matter, again, brain and spinal cord predominantly. If you eat contaminated matter, yes, you can get variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease from eating tainted deer, generally not meat. Generally talking about brain and spinal tissue. Last is scrapie, and scrapie is the one that's been known for the longest. Scrapie was known more than a century ago, and this was found in sheep. The reason it's called scrapie is because the sheep would lean up against a post and rock back and forth because they had bad motor skills. If the brain is turning into a sponge, how good are they going to be about controlling their bodies? That's why it was called mad cow disease. They were mad not as in angry, but mad as in crazy. Crazy as in they were moving all herky-jerky like they couldn't control their bodies because their brains were full of holes. So scrapie, they would scrape up against the fence post, and we're not exactly sure how it got from sheep to cows, but again, it was probably something similar to the forced cannibalism, though they weren't necessarily, they were probably given sheep matter at some point. I did hear a story, read a story, I want to say it was up in the Northeast, like New York, something like that. A guy died of variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease from eating squirrel brains. So apparently squirrels get it too, and you didn't even know that. So on that note, sleep tight.